Is it time now? Can I finally be a little bit critical without getting all the backlash and all the naysayers telling me that I'm overdoing it or that I'm not being patient enough? Is it time? Can we talk about some of the issues on this team? Is it safe? First and foremost, welcome everybody to Night Watch. Thanks to all the new subscribers. Thanks to everybody who's joined us thus far. You are much appreciated. And look, I just want to give a special shout out for all the craziness we're going to go through today with the basketball team. Last night, I had the pleasure of attending an event put on by the R Foundation and some of the Rutgers alumni associations, and it was part of Rutgers Takes the Garden State, and we all got together for a New Jersey Devils game at the Prudential Center. I have to say it was absolutely brilliantly well put together. An absolute pleasure to attend. I went there with my girlfriend. Just great hospitality, great communication. All the people that were there helping out as part of, the alumni networks and the R Foundation. Just excellent all-around experience. We got to go. We got some cool swag. It was like a snow hat with a Devils logo and a Rutgers logo. Little Rutgers alumni pins. The food was good, provided by the Prudential Center. The coordination with the Prudential Center and the New Jersey Devils was awesome. We had good seats. We were all sitting near each other. The game was fun. Devils came out with a win. So I just wanted to shout out the R Foundation and Rutgers Takes the Garden State. It's actually a project where Rutgers is reaching out to the whole state with various events across the entire state of New Jersey to connect alumni from all three campuses. And a big focus of this is getting all three campuses, alumni of all three campuses together all across the state. And it's just an absolutely awesome program. If you haven't checked it out, just type in Google Rutgers Takes the Garden State. Register for one of these events. They're actually right now at an event for the Hip Hop Nutcracker at New Jersey Performing Arts Center in Newark. But February 1st, they're going to be at Rutgers Day at Adventure Aquarium down in Camden. February 8th, they're at the Liberty Science Center. March 1st, Rutgers Day at the American Dream Mall. So there's stuff for the whole family, kids, your significant others. I would highly recommend going to one of these events because it was just an absolute pleasure interacting with the folks who put it together. An absolute pleasure getting to mingle and network with other alumni from all three campuses, and just an excellent time all around. Special shout out to Diane and Erin. Diane and Erin, just awesome people, and everybody else who we associated with. So look, quick 2 minutes just shouting out the Rutgers R Foundation and the alumni networks for putting that on. But let's get down to business with this basketball team. Rutgers goes down. First Big Ten game of the season. Another road game. Let's not forget we had Kennesaw State. So this is not Rutgers' first road game this year. Dropped to Kennesaw State. Dropped to Ohio State 80-66. Many of the same things that myself and some others have been concerned about continue to rear their head with this team. As I've said, this is not new to this season, which is probably concerning because the talent this season is so good, and to have the same issues that we've seen so many times with Peichel coached basketball teams is a little bit disheartening, I'd say. It's intriguing looking at the stat sheet in this game and looking at, team stats, because based on team stats, you would almost think that this would have been a much closer game. Rutgers loses by 14 points, and you'd think they would have lost by less given the parity here in some of these numbers. 3-point shooting, Rutgers was actually 38.9 to Ohio State's 33.3, and Ohio State is a good perimeter shooting team. So we outshot them from three as far as percentages, and in terms of raw numbers, we hit 7 threes of 18, and they only hit 6 threes of 18. So that was close. Free throw percentages, we were once again 91.7%. So once again, above 90 in our free throw shooting. That's one area I think we have improved upon this year. No surprise when you have better shooters in general on the team. Ohio State only 76, really 77% from the line. They hit 10, we hit 11. So the parity's there. Rebounding, overall rebounds, 33-30 in favor of Ohio State. We had 12 offensive rebounds. They had 11. They had 22 defensive. We had 18. Too many second chances for Ohio State, I thought. They had 4 blocks to only 1 for us, 3 steals apiece. Turnovers. Rutgers had 13 turnovers to Ohio State's 8. And the foul parity was there. 16 fouls on Rutgers, 15 on Ohio State. Certainly down the stretch, guys like Royal getting a lot of calls. When you play that good and you're on your home court, sometimes you're going to get some calls. I know some of them were a little questionable towards the end, especially when Rutgers was trying their best to stop him. I thought there were 1 or 2 in there where they did, but he got the foul. It's unfortunate, but the disparity wasn't really there. It was called pretty evenly. Where I think it really gets down to the nitty-gritty of why we struggled, look at the turnover margin. 13 for Rutgers, only 8 for Ohio State. And then you look at field goal percentage. Ohio State, 55% from the field. Rutgers, only 42%. Rutgers, 24 from the field of 57. And Ohio State, 32 of 58. And right there is where you have your margin of victory, basically. And I think what it comes down to is 2 things that we've seen pretty much the entire season thus far. On the defensive side of the ball, Rutgers just struggling immensely to keep guys out of the paint, to properly keep up when guys beat them off the dribble, to switch properly and maintain some defensive presence when guys sneak behind and get into the paint, and when guys get to the rim. Rutgers just struggling so many phases defensively. And then on the offensive side of the ball, you look at that turnover ratio and you look at the field goal percentage. And the fact of the matter is that Rutgers, once again, is extremely inconsistent shooting the basketball and having a ton of trouble, finishing at the rim, getting good shots, finding good shots, and having any kind of consistency or any kind of, downhill play on offense. And if you look at the player stats here, obviously, Royal on Ohio State absolutely goes off on Rutgers, 22 points. But Thornton also had 22 points. So they just kind of dominate. Parrish with 12, and Royal also with 6 rebounds, 2 assists. So brutal game from that standpoint as far as defensively against those key players for Ohio State. But then you look over at Rutgers, and Dylan Harper has 18 points. And it was a very slow day for Dylan Harper for a lot of the game, especially early in the game. I mean, it looked like they kind of had Dylan shut down, and Dylan was having a slow day, and it looked like Ace might have to take the reins. But Dylan still finishes with a team-high 18 points. Nothing to sneeze at. I mean, only 4 points less than Ohio State's leading scorers. Ace Bailey with 12, Ogbole with 10. So it's not like our stars weren't there and having some presence, right? Somerville with 8 points. Acuff had 5. Durkak 8. Durkak started off really hot, and that's what you're going to get from Durkak, right? You're going to get some lights out 3-point shots. You're going to get some nice takes to the rim, and then you're going to get just epic droughts from Durkak, and that's just the nature of who he is as a player. We can be prepared for that all season. And with Ace Bailey, you have a bit of struggles early on, taking some of those crazy shots we always talk about and not really getting a lot of them to fall early. But then in the second half, he starts getting everything he puts up to fall. And I understand he had fouls at the time, but Pike sits him right when he's really heating up. And that hurt the team, I think, in that little run. It's coaching. You make those type of decisions when guys have fouls. You don't want to get him in foul trouble when you need him down the stretch, but I think it hurt momentum a little bit there. But what's this real story of Rutgers on offense? I think it's just the fact that every time we scored, whether it was Lathan Somerville going in, whether it was Somerville getting to the line, whether it was Harper getting to the line, whether it was Harper finding a 3, whether it was Bailey shooting over 2 guys on a fadeaway jumper, which he's so talented at getting to fall. No matter how Rutgers scored, with the exception of early on with some of the supporting cast putting up some decent points and starting pretty hot. And this is becoming a trend with Rutgers, I think. Every time we did score, it seemed like we had to fight through fire and hell and mud and snakes and quicksand to get the ball to fall. Like, guys had to just take on epic individual efforts or, epic, second chance shots or, crazy near turnover feats or, saves from out of bounds. Or it had to be this heroic effort every time Rutgers started to get the rock to go through the hoop. Whereas with Ohio State, there was this smooth, fluid movement to the ball, and Royal and these guys were effortlessly getting second chances, getting to the rim, finding the right shot, finding the right guy, and Rutgers is fighting tooth and nail to get points. And this has become a trend with this team. And it's not new for Rutgers. It's not new, right? Because we seem to struggle to have any kind of philosophy or any kind of pecking order other than, hey, Dylan and Ace are superstars. They're going to get points. Other than that, figure it out somehow. There's really no other rhyme or reason or plan to how we're going to get points, where we're going to get them from, and couple that with really just bad defense. Just not good defense. Just bad defense. Bad defense. And rebounding, that's not good enough. But I second chance offensive points for Ohio State were a problem in certain glaring spots today. But the rebounding was similar. There's some parity in that. It didn't look like it when you're watching the game, just because the way the game's going. But there was some parity in the rebounding. Just the absolute heroic effort it takes for Rutgers to score every time they try to score. And here's why I kind of opened the show saying, is it okay now? Is it finally okay to raise some concerns? Because all we've heard through the first part of this season, and now Rutgers is 5-4. Only really notable win at all was the overtime win against Notre Dame on a neutral court. And Notre Dame is not necessarily expected to set the world on fire this season. Other than that, you've lost to really every notable team and every notable arena you could have. With the exception of losing to Kennesaw State, which is a bad loss on the road. And Kennesaw State, nothing to take away from them, but you lost to Kennesaw State on the road. It's not good for your resume as a Big Ten team that thought you were going to be a serious contender this year. I'll say at the onset, I'm not making predictions that this season is lost or that Rutgers is not going to make a run or that we can't achieve what we'd like to this season. I mean, there's a lot of season left. So I'm not sitting here saying that it's all over. But what I'm saying is from right now, on December 7th, 2024, right after the game to Ohio State, Rutgers sitting at 5-4. I'm not particularly impressed with what I've seen. We've heard now through the last several games that we should be happy. Don't worry, it's not a big deal. We had a good showing against Texas A&M. We had a good showing against Alabama. So we're a young team. We'll hit our stride. Don't worry about it. So much fun to watch. So close. So many moral victories. All of those things. Well, I told you that at some point the moral victories had to turn into actual victories, because at some point you had to start building an actual resume to try to actually get where you wanted to go this season. And if you don't start turning moral victories into actual victories, you're going to have a tough time later in the year. This game wasn't even a moral victory. We got beat soundly by Ohio State, a conference foe, and it's not easy to play on the road in the Big Ten. I said it in my preview with Buckeye Boggs. I said it. I'm not taking it lightly. Teams are going to have a lot of trouble coming to Jersey Mike's Arena. We're going to have trouble going into any Big Ten arena in the country. That's just how it is. It doesn't matter who is who or who you think different teams are. There's parity in the Big Ten, and it's going to be tough to go on the road. So I understand that. I really do. I truly understand that. But looking at this team, you have 2 NBA lottery picks, and that's all we were told by anybody who would tell us anything all offseason for 2 years. We have 2 lottery picks, and we shouldn't worry about anything. Any of the issues last year, any of the other issues as far as going out and getting a 5 or what we're doing in the transfer portal, because we have 2 NBA lottery picks, so everything's all good. Enjoy the ride. All sold out. Make sure you buy your tickets. You're not going to want to miss this. This is going to be one for the ages. And we have a coaching staff that, knowing they were going to have these 2 supremely talented players, knowing for quite a while that these two individual players were going to come to Rutgers, knowing their skills, knowing their strengths and weaknesses, knowing how they wanted to play ball, knowing the style of play that would help these two players to succeed, went out and did a lot of shopping this offseason and went out and got a plethora of role players, many of them veterans, and built a team that you would hope that the team that they were building was part of a larger plan to make a serious run this season, knowing that these two supremely gifted athletes, who are probably the best basketball players that you're going to get probably in most of our lifetimes as Rutgers fans, that you would build a team that would, A, give you the best chance to make the farthest run you could this season, and B, give you the best chance to show future recruits and just, continue the steps forward as a culture in the program, to show that, that was a heck of a year. It's a memorable year. This is how far we went. Now, even though we're not necessarily getting that level of talent year in and year out, we're going to still build a culture and a winning mentality here and keep that momentum going. And you would think that this coaching staff would put together a team, not only individual for individual, talent for talent, but put together a team with an overall philosophy and plan on how this particular team, this particular year is going to play well and get us where we want to go. And there's a lot of talk out there that we didn't get good enough role players to surround Ace and Dylan with, that NIL is the reason we didn't get enough role players, that, whatever else is the reason. And I tell you that going out and getting the top player, in the MAC, the top player on a given team, one of the better players on a Princeton team that makes a tournament run, that doesn't guarantee that those individuals are going to be elite Big Ten players. And I'm not saying that. Being the top scorer on your previous team or the best defender at a lower level does not guarantee that you're going to be an elite Big Ten player. But that being said, these guys know how to play basketball, these role players. They didn't forget overnight how to play. And they had strengths and weaknesses when you went out and you got them. If PJ Hayes struggles on the defensive side of the ball, that was something that was on his resume before you recruited him. If Zach Martini struggles against more elite competition, which I'm not saying we were elite competition last year, but he certainly didn't struggle against us. And in the tournament run, I wouldn't say he was necessarily one of the deficiencies on Princeton for the years he was there. Acuff. These guys, whether they have deficiencies on either side of the ball or not, those deficiencies were documented. And if they weren't well documented and well understood, then you would hope that the coaching staff going out and recruiting them to come and join Rutgers would have a decent working knowledge of what they were good at and what they weren't, and whether or not that made them a good fit for whatever this team was going to be this year to complement these two superstars. And I'm sorry, but I'm not convinced that every one of these role-playing guys is just that bad, that with 2 lottery picks, a guy, and I understand Ace is an inconsistent player right now. I understand Ace has a great ceiling, but as a freshman, he's not necessarily the consistent weapon you want him to be. But that should be known too. And I had questions about that going into the year, but again, I was told, knock it off. You're being negative. You don't understand how good these guys are. It's just going to blow you away. Okay. They're freshmen, but okay. But even then, he's still giving you 12 points. Dylan Harper on a bad day is giving you 18. Ace on a day is giving you 12. Ace Bailey gave you 7 rebounds. 7 rebounds. And I've been saying that Bailey needs to give you rebounds. I don't want to hear that this team is young and I'm not being patient, because I'm not knocking Bailey and Harper at all. I'm not knocking those guys. But nor am I saying that they had such a bad day that you needed the supporting cast to go above and beyond. What I'm saying is this. They had a pretty respectable day, each of them. And the supporting cast started off doing pretty well, and then they didn't do enough down the stretch. And this is becoming a trend with PJ Hayes and becoming a trend with Zach Martini. But here's the thing. I'm not blaming talent. I'm not saying that Martini and Hayes, they just don't have it. That nobody else on this team has it. That the reason we're not good enough is because despite 2 lottery picks, we just have everybody else who can't play at all, and that's why we're losing. I don't buy it. I think it's a failure of coaching philosophy so far and a failure of the ability of the coaching staff to put these guys in positions to succeed with the skill sets they have. And that started when you recruited them. That started when you solicited their services in the portal. You should have a legitimate plan and know how they're going to plug into the team you have, given their strengths, given their weaknesses. It started there. If that analysis was not conducted well enough, that's part of the problem. If not being able to pull a big man, no one's expecting you to go out and get, Ballo in the portal. But you don't push anymore for a big man. And Agbole, I think he's been improving every game, really. 10 points today, 5 rebounds, 2 assists. He's been the better of the 2 bigs, I think, the last few games. And I'm not knocking Somerville's upside at all, but I think Agbole's been pretty good. Fine. If you want to roll with him, or if you think you need somebody else, every other player that you recruited, overall, the failures or the issues start there. And then they carry all the way through into the kind of warm-up games at a conference and right into the tournament in Vegas, and they continue to come into conference play now. Initially, you needed a plan for these guys. You needed to know what their strengths and weaknesses were and how that fit into the overall team. And then you have to put them in a position to utilize their strengths and hide their weaknesses as best you can in different lineups, in different matchup-dependent strategies, et cetera, in different substitution patterns. You have to find ways to get these guys the best opportunities possible to get them playing as a team, whether that be defensively, offensively, et cetera. And if this team is going to struggle naturally on defense, which I think is probably the case at this point, you just don't have the defensive talent on the roster, then you need to find a way to get guys in positions consistently to score the basketball better than they've been. Our scoring should not be reliant on guys making acrobatic, incredible plays every time. Our scoring should be a little bit more downhill with a little bit more of a strategy as to how to get guys in positions to get the ball in their hands that is most advantageous for that individual player to have a high likelihood of making a shot. I'd like to think it's not rocket science, but we have seen these issues now for several years, no matter how talented or non-talented this team has been. And this is one of the most talented teams we've had. I understand that the supporting cast, they're not superstars. But we've had prior teams, the team that almost beat Houston, we had Miles Johnson, who was a beast at the 5, and then you have some really good players, and Gio, Ron, and, Caleb, and these guys. But it's not like we've had 1 through 7 epic superstars when we've been successful. And it's not like other teams who win games and who run more, efficient offenses or play better as a team have incredible players from 1 through 7 on every roster in the Power 5. It's not the case. I think there's a lot of good pieces on this team that, they may have their strengths and weaknesses. Even our star freshmen have their strengths and weaknesses. But you should be able to put them in positions to succeed. And what I'm seeing here is, so far, a coaching staff that doesn't quite have a very good or efficient or concrete plan as to how to fit these pieces onto the chessboard and how to formulate all these individual players into a good or decent team. Right now, I think this team is decent. So far, the results have been mediocre, and I think that's fair given that we went toe-to-toe with some very good teams. This was a road Big Ten game, I understand, but this was a team who got destroyed by Maryland. Now, they still have talent. They're not, one game is not, defining of their entire season or their entire strength of their team, but they did get dominated. I understand it was a tough game for them. And I understand that this does not guarantee that we're going to struggle on Tuesday. But don't sleep on Penn State, who just beat Purdue. Don't sleep on them. And I think anybody who thought that this team was a shoo-in for anything, just given the 2 lottery picks, I don't think you necessarily have to hit the panic button or start saying that we're doomed. And I'm not saying that either, but I think it's time to take people with a little bit of concern seriously and not just be dismissive of people who have some concerns, because the concerns seem like they're true. They're evident. They're a little undeniable. The team could 100% rattle off 6-7 wins right now and put most of this to bed, and I hope they do. And I still have faith that they're going to finish, near the top of the Big Ten and make the run we want them to make. There's just too much talent. But that's going to require, I think, this staff to look deep and figure out what the deficiencies are and how they can better put these pieces in positions to be a better team and a more cohesive team. Because I'm not seeing it right now. I'm seeing a bunch of guys with strengths and weaknesses who aren't really sure where they fit into the overall situation. And I think a good example of this is, let's look at Grant. Let's look at Dylan Grant's minutes. All of a sudden, Dylan Grant is getting run in these games. Now, I'm not against Dylan Grant. I think it's good that he's getting run. But I think it proves my point to an extent, right? And here's why I think that. If Dylan Grant was going to be somebody you needed minutes from, meaningful minutes from, in conference or otherwise, then why was Dylan Grant getting pretty much no run in the out-of-conference schedule when you were figuring out who you wanted to run with and who you didn't? You'd think he would get at least a little bit of run if there was a possibility you would need him. And the fact that you now need him and you're trying to get something by putting him in the game and trying to see what you have because you don't have answers elsewhere, that to me is proof positive that you're kind of just out of answers. And you didn't see it coming. And that's a big problem, in my opinion. You should have known if you're going to need Grant, you should have known you were going to need Grant. If you didn't know you were going to need him, then that's an issue. That means you didn't see everything that you should have seen with this team. And you weren't really very adept at figuring out what you had and when you might need them and who you might need to get run and who could stand up to certain competition and in certain situations and who couldn't. Because it looks like guys who weren't getting run like Grant are getting some minutes, not significant crazy minutes, but getting some time. And guys that you thought were going to headline this thing are barely seeing the floor. Now, yes, you learn, just like I learned. We all learn as new information comes in. You don't fault anybody for evolving and learning as time goes on. But when the team is 5-4, has a bad loss to Kennesaw State, opens in conference with a loss, and even in wins that could be construed as moral victories, even in wins that look fairly good, losses, even in losses that can be construed as moral victories, where we lose but we do so with honor to good teams, the same issues are carrying through. There are common thread issues that go all the way from the bad loss at Kennesaw to the win against Notre Dame to the good losses against A&M and Alabama to the acceptable because it's on the road but still a rough loss against Ohio State. There are common concerns that continue through all of those games. And yeah, Ace Bailey not playing well against Kennesaw State and being okay with 12 points against Ohio State, that's okay. That's in there. Dylan Harper either carrying the team or not being able to fully carry the team. Okay, but I'm not talking about those two guys. I'm not talking about the two of them. I'm talking about the lack of an identity with the team overall and a lack of understanding of where do we go and how do we get there when those guys aren't clicking. Or even if they are, maybe we could figure something else out to bum rush another team as a cohesive unit so that those talented stars feed off of that and exceed expectations even more. So that rather than fighting through quicksand every time they score, they have an easier time of going about it and have an ability to shine. even Lathan Somerville, who I think is very talented, sometimes we're just relying on him to fight through with a difficult shot and get to the line. He's a good free throw shooter. Fight through. A guy like him should be getting minutes when it's the right time so that he can get and eat and get his when the matchup's right, when the lineup's right, as he continues to develop and become a weapon for us. Even if on defense he can struggle at times, maybe he can be an asset on the boards, and he has been. I mean, he should be put in positions, too, where he's not fighting through quicksand and then, he's a liability, take him out, put this one in. I've said that I wanted to see this team become a cohesive unit, and I think we have the pieces to do it. And I'm not somebody who's going to sit here and say we just don't have the pieces. And if we don't, that's a problem. But I don't even think that's the case. I think we have just struggled to become a cohesive unit and team that's on both sides of the ball, that's in numerous areas. And so far, it's really produced these results that are mediocre. And you can say, Larry, get over it. I mean, we went toe-to-toe with two top 20 teams, and we lost on the road, and Kennesaw was blindsided us. But how many of those are you going to well, it was Kennesaw. It was the first road game. And it's Ohio State. It's on the road in conference. And these guys were 20, and so were those guys. And how many of those losses are you going to stack on that you have to find a reason for? This team was not supposed to be number 40 in the country and happy with moral victories. This team was supposed to be a contender for something serious. Maybe not a Final Four contender. And I don't think that anybody really said that, especially after we didn't get a Elite Five in the portal. But so, a contender of some sort. Maybe a conference contender, at least top 5 conference contender. And that's not out of the question. It's not out of the question. It's not. We have one conference game. We're 0-1. We could go out and run the table for all I know. I mean, it's not over. It's not over. But the concerns now are evident and undeniable. And you have to look at them and discuss them. And you can't just avoid it as, this is a young team. They're finding themselves. It's tough to play on the road. No, because there's legitimate common threads that are permeating through all of these losses that should be concerns for everybody. And if I seem agitated, even though we're 5-4 and this was a road loss to a tough Ohio State team on the road in the Big Ten, then I am agitated. I expected more. This talent it's great talent. I understand it's freshmen. But I was one of the ones saying, I'm not sure if we could rely on freshmen. And I was told, no, don't you dare. These guys are ridiculous. Never seen anything like this, Larry. Never seen anything like this. So just relax and enjoy the ride. It's going to be a great year. Okay. I think they're doing pretty damn well for freshmen. I don't think it's really their fault. But where's everything else on this team? And I know. It's a Rutgers channel, and this type of WFAN sports banter that I'm giving you is not what we're used to seeing or what we love. But look, at the end of the day, man, I think it's valid. I think, with a team this talented and deficiencies this consistent and this evident, it bears some criticism, and it bears some of this type of dialogue here. Now, how do you make it better? There are plenty of ways to try to make this better. I think you preach defense relentlessly. You get your best defenders on the floor with Ace and Dylan, and you have some accountability with defensive play as best you can. You're not the most defensively talented team. I understand that. But you get better effort out of the defensive side of the ball. And if you have to sacrifice scoring for it, you do it. On the other side of the ball, or if you make the decision that, look, we're never going to be elite defensively, which I think is a fair analysis at this point. I don't think this team's ever going to be elite defensively. And I think that's an inherent mismatch with Peichel. And that's another thing I'm saying. Like, if you're going to be a scoring team because these two freshmen are scorers, maybe you should go more with your philosophy and what you're good at and go get a bunch of gritty defenders to surround them with. Or if you're going to go all in on scoring, then you should know that you're going to have a bunch of deficiencies on the defensive side of the ball. How can you mitigate that as best you can? But then how can you maximize these guys' offensive abilities on the other side of the ball? Because right now what I'm seeing is, yeah, we don't have a lot of defense because we went out and recruited scorers. But on the offensive side of the ball, we're not maximizing those guys' scoring abilities because we're not putting them in positions to be able to score, especially against better competition. So if you make the decision that defense is just going to struggle, that's okay too. But now see, what are our strengths? We have a bunch of really talented offensive players on this team. How can we put these offensive players in positions to succeed? How can we maximize PJ Hayes' ability from beyond the arc? How can we maximize Martini's abilities? How can we have Ace and Dylan in better positions because they're getting double teamed all the time and they have to, pull miracles out every time they go down the floor. They're both on the floor at the same time, plus they're shooters on the floor. You have bigger guys like Somerville, who's also talented on the offensive side of the ball. Guys like Agboli, who's been improving week in and week out. You have some pieces, and not just one superstar, but two. How can you make defenses really, really work to stop you? Because you've got guys who can hit shots all over the floor. Does that mean sacrificing defense even more by taking out a Durkak for more shooters at times just to put stress on the opposing defense? I don't know, maybe. But you've got to go out there and figure out something. You have all these pieces and they're not fitting them together consistently. That's the other thing. I'm rarely seeing consistent lineups that work versus don't work. I'm seeing guys just plugging in because we don't know where to go for answers. Combinations of players in there. I just don't know what they're doing, why they're in there. What's the reason for it? Is it the defensive thing? Is it for a specific player or matchup that you have? Is it for rebounding? Is it for scoring? Is it more advantageous to score against this particular team with this particular lineup because of the mismatches, as to the 3 guy or the 4 guy or the 1 guy or whatever? I don't see anything. I see a team saying, go out there. Dylan and Ace are superstars. Figure it out. Create what you're going to create. We're not going to be good on defense. It sucks, but live as best you can. And we got to get shots to fall. And when our guys are playing like miracle workers, we'll do well. And when they're not playing like miracle workers, we're going to struggle. And that's just not good enough with a team this talented. It's just not good enough. Point blank, period. Point blank, period. So Rutgers starts 5-4. Penn State visits Jersey Mike's on Tuesday. Seton Hall visits next Saturday. Then we have Princeton. Columbia is the only breath maybe that we have coming to Jersey Mike's 2 days before New Year's. And then you just get into the bulk of the Big Ten schedule. Now, I'm somebody who thinks that, I understand Penn State beat Purdue. I understand they're a formidable team. We're at home on Tuesday. You got to bounce back. I think this team does bounce back against Penn State. Their backs are against the wall. They're going to be feeling it. They're going to be hearing stuff like what I'm saying today, and they're going to be sick of hearing it. And they're going to go out there and I think try to make a statement against Penn State. And don't undersell that Ohio State was trying to make a statement against us because of the Maryland debacle. So it's not just one-sided. Ohio State, Royal, these guys are really talented. I think the coach did a good job on Ohio State. I think the Buckeyes deserve a lot of credit for going out there and consistently finding shots, consistently making shots, consistently doing what they had to do to get their season on track. But I think that's going to be Rutgers when Penn State comes to town. They're going to be like Ohio State was today. Their backs are against the wall. They're going to make more things happen. I think the coaching staff is going to answer the bell and get their things on track. And I do think that we can, and I hope will, win that game against Penn State. And then you got the rivalry with Seton Hall coming to town, and that's not going to be easy at all. At all. And you've got to try to beat them. And then you got a Princeton team who's always going to give you a little bit of trouble. And then Columbia, and you hit the road against the Big Ten. You got 11 Wisconsin early. You got 8 Purdue early. Even though they got that loss, things do not get any easier. And if you don't figure out who you are, the issues we have in the paint, the issues we have with rebounding, Big Ten teams are going to exploit you when you have those problems in the paint. They're going to exploit you with second chance opportunities. They're going to exploit you when they can shoot freely and there's always an open man to take a shot. They're going to exploit you when you have scoring droughts and you can't find good shots and you don't know exactly what to do on the offensive side of the ball. Big Ten teams are going to exploit you. And you've shown that you can struggle against SEC teams, although you can play them. You can play them, but it's hard for you to pull it out because of the sheer power there and your inability to defend consistently. You've shown that you can lose a tough game to a lower conference opponent on the road, and now you've got to go into the Big Ten, which it doesn't matter, style of play is this or that. If all these elite perimeter players we supposedly had on the offensive side of the ball, the answer that I heard, or at least what I thought, was that going into Big Ten play, maybe these teams are better in the paint. Maybe these teams are better around the rim. Maybe these teams are better on the boards. But the style of play in the Big Ten, we are going to be able to perimeter shoot them, run them, and everything else off the floor because we're just a different style of team now. We can shoot from anywhere. We have weapons everywhere. And even though there's going to be some mismatches with Big Ten teams, we are still going to be a tough and difficult matchup the other way for them. And we're going to be able to make noise and do damage in the Big Ten for those reasons. And then beyond the Big Ten, we're going to have a team finally that's more formidable with some of the other teams that are guard heavy, that are shooting heavy, that have speed, all those things. And right now it doesn't look like we really have much of either, right? You got perimeter players, it looks like, who really can't keep up and are consistently beat off the dribble and beat with guys getting open on the outside. And then you obviously really don't have much in the way of rim protectors down low that are consistent. It's tough if you have defensive perimeter players who are not quick enough to stop guys cutting into the lane and getting in there toward the basket, and you also lack a rim protector, you're going to struggle a lot. And I think that's one of the things we're seeing with this team that's so troubling, and that's what I mean about building a team. If you're going to build a team that's guard heavy and supremely talented on the outside, and for that reason you're going to kind of pass up going heavier down low, then you better have guards that can not only score consistently on the offensive side of the ball, but who can guard consistently on the defensive side of the ball so that you don't really need that rim protector as much. And if you're going to have guys that are great on offense but struggle defending, in the guard positions, then you're going to have to invest in a rim protector because guys are going to be getting past them and getting to the lane over and over again. And it seems like we have the worst combination of that. We have guys who struggle to defend on the outside, but then no real consistent solid rim protector on the inside, and that's why guys are consistently scoring on us in the paint. And that's what I mean when I talk about roster construction. I don't blame the individual players with their strengths and weaknesses, but when you're putting all these guys together, you got all these transfers, and a lot of them seem to have similar skill sets. They struggle on the defensive side of the ball. They are or were really good shooters, but they can't necessarily create their own shot all the time. And you don't have a force down low. I like Ogbole. I like his development. Somerville has a bright future. But you don't have a guy this year who can fill that role. What were you thinking when you constructed this roster? If you're going to blame talent, that's all I'm saying. But that concludes my rant for today because I just have nothing left in me. And I had such a nice time yesterday with the R Association, R Foundation, all these things. I'm not mad. I'm a happy guy right now. But this has not been up to expectations. And at this point, I don't want to beat a dead horse anymore. You got to go out, beat Penn State. I think they can. I think they will. Beat Penn State. I still believe in this team. I still believe this coach can turn this thing around. I still believe this staff can turn this thing around. But I got to call out what I'm seeing right now. And up to this point, 5-4 with some of the same issues, game in and game out. I have to call out what I see and what the nonsense is. And I don't want to hear any more of that. Oh, it's another moral victory even though we lost. And oh, we'll be fine. And oh, it's enough. Eventually, you stop pushing it off till tomorrow. You got to start doing it today. If this team is going to do something this year, they better get started. They better get started. Because the best thing about getting Dylan and Ace should not be that we get to have bragging rights on draft day that they once wore a Rutgers jersey for a few months. Should be a little more in it for Rutgers fans to be excited about than just they're going to go to the NBA and they went to Rutgers for a few months. If that's all that there is, then what was the point? And that's on the staff. Putting this team together and finding ways to use it. Guys, if you have not done so yet, click the subscribe button. It's right here. Even if you're a Buckeyes fan, I do a lot of Big Ten content. Click the subscribe button. Help me, since I'm here talking to you about this, and I'm giving you content even when it's a rough day, even when I'm not happy, and I just want to forget about basketball. I'm here talking to you guys. Click that subscribe button. It's really appreciated. Help us continue to grow. We got to get to 1,000 subscribers. Hit the subscribe button. Share this show with a friend. And remember, we're also available as an audio podcast on every major podcasting platform. If you listen on the audio version of the podcast, when you're bored one day, type in YouTube. In fact, do it now. If you're sitting around on your smartphone, type in Night Watch Larry K on YouTube and give us a subscribe. It's much appreciated. Remember, we're still in the market for sponsors. And by the way, there will be at Beach House Brewery December 19th. Eric LeGrand is having a party for his bourbon. We will be there. Night Watch should be there, along with Steve Tishner for my other show that I do with him. The RU Review is part of the Jersey Sports Network. So Beach House Brewery in Belmar, December 19th. Mark your calendars. If you want to meet me, I should be in the house. I will confirm that soon enough. And come say what's up, talk a little Rutgers with me, and come hang out down the shore on the off season for the locals, right? The Jersey locals down there near Christmas. Nice little holiday party. Come join us. But until then, guys, keep your heads up. I will still have a football season recap show, big picture type episode coming soon. We will talk about the bowl game, whatever that may be, pretty soon. So there's a transfer portal coming up. I want to talk about the recruits a little bit that we just signed. So there will be more content from Night Watch. So keep it locked right here. Make sure you click subscribe and stay tuned for more. Larry K. out.